and then we'll go ahead and get started. Can everyone hear me okay? Fantastic, thank you. Alrighty, here are just a few reminders for using Zoom. If you're able to keep your name up there so we can see who all's on the call and see who's asking questions. And the recommended viewing is to exit full screen. This just lets you see more clearly and gives you more options. And I've muted everybody so that we have some clear communication today. If you are speaking, I can unmute you before you start speaking. And if you have any questions throughout the call, please write them in the chat box or you can raise your hand. So today's speakers, we have a small last minute change. Donna is actually not able to participate in the call this morning. Everything is okay, but she can't be here. So I'm gonna go through her slides. We did a practice, and so she shared what her thoughts were for her slides. So I'm gonna go ahead and go through them. And if she has anything that she would like to add that I left out after, I'll ask her to add those to the call. We also have Deborah Freeman from Orange County presenting this morning. And Sandy Crawford had some really great best practices to share. Unfortunately, she has programming this morning, which we completely understand, and we're very happy that she was able to share some of her best practices, so I'll be presenting on her behalf this morning. So the topic of this call is engaging older youth audiences, and Donna is an expert in all cooking classes, so she wanted to share some information about cooking with the older youth audiences. Donna's used Cooking Matters for teens, Cooking Matters for adults, and this is for the older teens who are, ready to go, ready to be adults, and Cooking Matters for parents, for students who are parents. Here you can see some pictures that she used or that she's included, and these were taken during actual cooking classes with teens. What it's like working with older students. Donna shared that it can be very challenging working with this population, but also extremely rewarding. Donna shared that it's really important to think outside of the box. You might have to approach things differently whenever you're working with this age group versus working with kids who are just, happy to hear everything you have to share and agree with everything and are very attentive. Also different than working with adults who may be more experienced cooking. She said that it's very important to establish classroom rules right away, and that you don't have to be mean and you don't have to be angry at the students right off the bat, but just establishing those ground rules can help for the participants to understand what the learning environment's going to be like. She also said don't assume anything and to keep an open mind. Some students might never have used a can opener before, might have never turned a stove on, so it's really important to keep an open mind and really show all the participants everything that you're doing, because it might be the first time that they've learned this. Donna recommends listening and observing how the students are responding to make sure that you're teaching on an appropriate level for them. The first lesson that she explains to her participants, and that there are no mistakes, only opportunities, and there are no silly questions, all are important. So she really creates an open and a safe learning environment for her participants. She recommends keeping the students engaged in an activity or with hands-on cooking as much as possible. So trying to keep the lecturing and the lessons down to a minimum and having that learning environment in the kitchen where they're engaged doing hands-on activities as much as possible. And she says to teach the curriculum points as you're actually involved in the activity versus just sitting down and learning in a classroom setting. Okay, Donna shared this very interesting story of Jorge overcoming the fear of the stove. So this was a participant in one of her Cooking Matters for Teens classes who was so nervous. He'd never operated a stove before, and he was very uncomfortable with cooking. Well, Donna showed him that it's very safe to use the stove, and that she had a fire extinguisher right there just in case anything were to happen. But she really helped him overcome the fear. And she said that by the end of the series, he was actually cooking for other participants in the class, and he was one of the most comfortable students there in that class that she taught. So really teaching the participants that cooking, it doesn't have to be scary, it can be very safe, and that there are those safety measures in place in case anything does happen. We think that it's important to share where Donna is able to complete her programming, because some people might not know, where do you capture these older youth audiences if you can't get into the high school or the middle school to teach? So she says that she is able to teach teens at these different locations at a guardian ad litem program, at different residential programs starting right now, and at the Sheriff's Youth Ranch. And she also gets to them through alternative schools as well. So not your typical high school setting, especially because the cooking classes take longer, they're more involved, so they're not really fit for the actual public school setting. And of course, there are program challenges. She says that students might come from different hardship backgrounds. So, the students are on different learning levels. They come from different backgrounds. So really meeting students where they are, understanding what types of hardships they're facing, especially with those groups that she's working with, and accepting the students for who they are. And she says that students might not have any kitchen or cooking skills. Like I had mentioned before, they might not know how to use a can opener. So really going back to basics and teaching the students, the very basic cooking skills. She also emphasizes the importance of teaching proper dishwashing procedures and food safety techniques as well. And lastly, Donna shares that teens are teens and to expect teen behavior. So, understanding this upfront and accepting the teens for who they are, and just recognizing that, they're going to goof off, they're going to have short attention spans, they might ask silly questions, they, are concerned with impressing one another. So just understanding this and, trying to not let it detract from the lessons is important. So I will not take questions on Donna's behalf, but if you do have questions, I have her email address at the end of the presentation, and I'm sure she would be happy to answer any questions. Like I said, Donna's a real cooking expert, and she's done so much work with this age population that she would be a really, really great resource if you are considering doing any cooking classes with teens, middle schoolers, or high schoolers. So next up we have Deborah Freeman. She's from Orange County. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Deborah. So can you say something and we can see if we can hear you, Deborah?
Hi, this is Deborah.
Great. So I'm going to pass the mic over to you, and you just let me know when you'd like me to click to the next slide, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you, Kaley. Thank you for inviting me to make this presentation before my peers. That's really an honor to be able to talk to my peers about what I do. And just to give you a little background of what I've been doing, I started as a program assistant in 2008, and I was hired to be the nutrition part of the program. We had a gardener, the county had a gardener to go along with me, and so the two of us went together to our schools. And at that time, I was the only PA in Orange County. And so ever since I started, I've been doing gardening, and I'm still doing gardening. But a few years into it, one of my fourth grade teachers, which is my preferred grade, left the school where she was and moved to a middle school, and asked if I would come and teach the ESC, the exceptional students, the students with disabilities, at that school. And I realized that that's a population that had a real need, and so I was excited about the challenge. And so for those students, I started out teaching all of the levels of functionality. The students with, from severe, well, maybe they weren't the most severe, but they were pretty disabled, up to the most highly functional ones. And then we found out after the first year that really the only ones that I could really help were the highly functional ones. And so for the next 3 years, I kept that class, and I used the curriculum, Great Garden Detective for them, because even though they were in middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, their reading levels were still low. Maybe some of them were only reading on the 2nd grade level, maybe up to a 4th grade level. And so Great Garden Detective was the curriculum that we felt worked best for them. And in between those years, I was asked to go to another middle school to teach the same population of students with disabilities. And so I was there for 2 years. So our regional food systems coordinator became involved, well, actually FNP in general, became involved with a food project. And so it was a high school program, and they asked me to come and do the nutrition lesson. So then I used Super Tracker for the high school students. Okay, all right, I need to go back a little bit. So back to middle school. So I liked the middle school atmosphere, and so I reached out to a lot of middle schools in the county, and the only response I got was from a program for gifted students. And because the middle school curriculum and high school, the curriculum is so tight, so there's really not a lot of wiggle room for anything else in there. So I agreed to go teach the gifted students, which are the complete opposite end of the spectrum from the other middle school students I was teaching before. And I say gifted, I use that term gifted because they tell me, they meaning the gifted teachers, that these students learn a little bit different. So I guess we can go to the next slide now. So these students learn a little bit different, they said, and they have different behavior patterns. And what I found is I don't know what regular middle school students are like because I've never taught that group, but the gifted students were required. I noticed the classes are grouped, the ages are grouped in classes, so it's 6th grade and 7th grade together, and then 8th grade by itself. And the 6th graders, they still require a lot of patience. They're still, really excited about just being in middle school, and they're a little silly and giggly. And 7th grade, they're a little calmer, and 8th grade, they are, much more mature. And so the curriculum that I used for them was gardening for nutrition, because that was the most expandable curriculum that we had to fit the needs of the gifted students, what they were like wanting to learn. And so I taught the lessons, and the teacher gave them the assignments based on their curriculum. Okay, so then now back to the high school. So we're working with this this high school, the agricultural students in this high school. And it was a perfect fit because, I wasn't teaching them gardening, but they were agricultural. And I was looking forward to moving up to that grade level just to see what that was like. And it's a challenge. High school students are still curious. They're still young. They're trying to figure out so many things. They have so much going on in their lives. And but they're still curious about learning. They're just cautious. They don't want to appear to be vulnerable on any level. They are really conscious of their social standing. They're really conscious, aware of the peer pressure. And so they present a different kind of problem. So, and also the agricultural students mostly are, at least the first maybe even 2 levels, are students that are mostly there for the science credit, not necessarily there because they want to learn about agricultural practices. So some of them, they are a lot of them are students that are at risk. The guidance counselor will send them to this class to just to give them the science that they need so that maybe they'll stay in school. There's a lot of flexibility in this curriculum because they do actual gardening, farming. They use they go out, they have animals, and they have a place to grow their plants, greenhouses and things. And so there's a lot of more flexibility with their program for me to come in. And the only other way that I can think of getting into the high school would be if maybe the high school had a life management type class. So I know in Orange County, they do have a life management type program that every student has to go through, has to take before they graduate. And Super Tracker is a part of that curriculum. So it's possible that that teacher, who is sometimes the PE teacher, would be willing to let us come in and teach that class for them. Okay, but if your school has an agricultural program, that is really, I think, the easiest way to get into high school if that's what you want to do. Okay, so I guess we can go to the next slide. So, tips for keeping older students engaged. Okay, so just from experience, I have found that the first thing you need to do is identify who the social leaders are in the classroom. And so notice how they come into the classroom, how they enter, how they leave, their manner. Are they talkative? Are they being friendly with the other students? And try to get them to engage in any kind of discussion that you want to have. So if you can get them on board, then it is likely that more students will follow in. Not everyone, but more students will be willing to participate. So, barriers. So right now, currently, I am teaching 4 first-year agricultural science classes, first-year students, 4 of these classes at a high school. And the first class starts at 7:20. So half the students there, yesterday I was with them, they came in and they went right to sleep. So class starts at 7:20, and some of them have to be at the bus stop at 5:45. So their day starts really early, and teenagers do not necessarily feel like they should go to bed early. They're going to stay up late and wake up early, and when they come to class, the first couple of classes, they're going to be sleepy. They're not going to have time for breakfast. And they may not even get to school to eat the breakfast that the school offers, and they may not even get there in time to do that. And so they're not really fully charged, maybe in the morning if you have morning classes. And so it's going to be hard to engage them in any kind of discussion. And of course, they have other issues going on at home. That even if, sometimes they don't even have breakfast at home food to eat for breakfast at home. So there are some economic challenges there that make it difficult for them to be their best. And so it is important to try to make it relevant to them, to grab their attention. And so I look for issues of interest to them. So, if there are athletes in the class, I talk about weight gain because most athletes want to gain weight, or they want to know how to maintain their weight, or they are really interested in their weight control, weight management. And so that's an easy way to talk about calories in, calories out, and look for family connections. So I try to make it, I try to say, well, these are food-based illnesses, and we want to try to avoid, keep ourselves healthy so that we can avoid getting these diseases. And we talk about hypertension and type 2 diabetes and heart issues, heart disease. And although they may not say this, in fact, they probably will, no one has ever told me during a discussion, but I will say, and you probably have, or you may know people that suffer from these diseases, and I don't ask anybody personally if they have a personal connection with these people, but oftentimes they'll tell me later on in the series and in several classes later that they have family members who have these diseases, and they become interested in, so that they can maybe be more aware of how to help these family members. I'm always gentle with them in terms of talking about diet, managing their diet, or anything that could cause them to be uncomfortable. I want to engage them in conversation, and those social leaders, I will, if I'm trying to get a discussion going, I will go to them first. And I will, maybe if I think that there are others that will participate, I will call on them and ask them to participate. But if they appear to be a little bit shy, I won't. I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable in the class. I want them to ease into this and have this discussion at their comfort level. Because, they have to, I feel like they have to trust me as a teacher that I'm going to take care of them, that I'm not going to be mean to them or expose them, I guess is a better word. And definitely solicit the teacher's support in the program, in your classroom. So maybe the teacher can offer incentives to participate. Maybe they can give them participation points. Also, the teacher may be necessary to maintain discipline. Okay, and the teacher may also be able to make connections with the curriculum that you may not be aware of. And so I guess we can go to the next slide, which is, yes, definitely program challenges. So the biggest challenge in Orange County, and I'm not sure that this is the way it is with other counties, but that the classrooms are digital. Okay, so Super Tracker is an online program. That in itself is a challenge because you are online. And the students, they are quick to move from where they're supposed to be to other fun places that they have found and possibly would rather be. So you have to keep moving. You have to give them just enough time to finish the online portion and then move on to the discussion part. So the first year that I taught Super Tracker, we had to move from one location where the computers were back to the classroom. And so that was an easy change. That was an easy transition. Okay, so once we were finished, then we immediately went into the classroom for the discussion. And that being digital was not really a problem then. So the teacher, he disconnected the Wi-Fi in the classroom so that they could not access their cell phones. But now that the classrooms are all digital, even the middle school here, they have their own computers. That means that the students, they have their cell phones, and whereas before they may have just been texting if they could, now it's doing whatever else they want to do with their cell phones. So definitely that's a challenge. Whereas before, you may be able to grab them with something that you're saying. Now it is hard to even get them to focus. And I'm not sure what the cell phone policy is in Orange County in the schools, but the students definitely use their phones. And the teacher will say when they walk in, turn your cell phones off, take your earbuds out, okay? But that doesn't mean that they may take the earbuds out, but that doesn't mean that they turn off their phones. Now, the first few classes, I don't say anything about side conversations. I don't say anything about the cell phone. After they are comfortable with me and I am comfortable with them, I will probably say something if they're on their phones. And now that they don't have to change locations to access the computer, then I may have to go in and go to them and ask them to close the screen. But I do it, I try to do it very discreetly. I don't want to embarrass anyone, although maybe I shouldn't, but I'll go up to them personally and I'll say, can you take your earbuds out? Can you turn the phone off? Can you close your screen? And because the teacher has already made an announcement, they already know what the expectation is, and they are choosing not to follow it. And so I just go to them as I see to ask them to comply. So engaging them in conversation, as I said, once you identify your classroom, your social leaders, then it is much easier to get them to be open with you. And even if sometimes in allowing them to have this open discussion and engaging these leaders and then finding out who they are, sometimes they'll say things that are not exactly connected to the lesson, or maybe questions that we are not talking about. But I allow them certain liberties so that I can find out who they are. I mean, I bring them back to what we're talking about, but I don't shut them down because I'm going to need them. I feel like I need them to participate, to open the discussion. So I try to manage their conversation with me, and in the classroom. So I guess that's all. We have one more slide, I think. Okay, program successes. Okay, yes, all right. So because they are not very willing to communicate and not really willing to reveal much of themselves, if I can get them to say anything personal, I'm really happy with that. And in one class, they were pretty good talkers, but it wasn't until actually we started talking about family habits that they opened up, and maybe these were things that they have been thinking about. But, and I'm talking about eating together as a family, and they're like, what? We don't do that. And then, that opened up a real nice conversation about relationships and relationships with food. And so that to me was a success, that I was able to, that they opened up, and so I could get into their situation and possibly offer ways that they could improve their situation, that they could affect their situation. Or sometimes they'll come up to me maybe after the third or the fourth lesson, before class or after class, and that's when they'll tell me that a parent or a grandparent has a food-related disease, and they'll ask me questions about it, and they're probably the students that hasn't said anything in the classroom. And so you have no idea what's going on in their heads. In fact, you don't know what any of them are thinking, because they are really keep it close to themselves. And so then I know that I've made an impact, that they are listening and they do want to know how to improve their lives, and become nutritionally more educated. And so Brianna was a student in one of the classes at the Food Hub, and I knew that she was open to conversation because of previous discussions that she had been involved in. And so one day we were talking about sodium and portion size, and Brianna would come in every day with a bag of Takis. And if you don't know what Takis are, they're a snack, a salty, spicy snack that the kids like to eat. And, it's really popular. And she'd come in with this bag every day. And so I asked her on this particular day if we could talk about her Takis. We were also talking about food labels. And so we looked at her. She said yes. And so we looked at the amount of sodium that was in her snack and the amount of servings that they said were in a bag. And she was shocked because it was maybe 4 servings per bag, and she would finish that whole bag herself before the class was over. So she was pretty taken back by those numbers because she had never read that on a food label. And so she was quiet. She didn't say anything after that. But I found out at the end of the class that she was really concerned about that. And so what she did was she went home and she looked at the ingredients in the bag and tried to figure out which ones. She played with some spices that she had at home, tried to figure out what combination of spices she could use that didn't include a lot of salt to get the flavor that she liked about the Takis. And so when she came up with a recipe, then she used that on her popcorn. She popped the popcorn and her plain corn chips so that she could still have a snack and that flavor that she liked without salt, because there was a family member that had hypertension and was on a low salt diet, and she did not connect what she was doing with a high, the amount of salt that could possibly be a problem. And so I was really happy with that. This is just a conversation that she was having. Well, actually, they had a focus group, and this came up in the focus group, and I just consider that a real big success. So that's all I have.
Wow, Deborah, thank you so much for sharing all of your successes and challenges in working with middle and high school students. In this presentation, it clearly shows that you have a lot of experience working with this age group. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box now for Deborah. I just wanted to touch on a few things that you discussed during your presentation. It really sounds like you have a lot of barriers and challenges that you're dealing with in working with these students, having a super early class time when the students are probably still very sleepy. They might not be eating breakfast before they get to your class, so it's even harder for them to be learning from you. Having just those normal high school challenges of working with this age group and dealing with the digital classroom, but I think that you've definitely overcome these barriers. You found a respectful way of asking the students to stay on topic and stay focused, and through your program successes, it shows that you've really gained trust from your students. So I think that you're a great resource for FNP and for anyone who has questions in dealing with this age group. Thank you so much for sharing all of this information and for working on putting these slides together. This was a really great presentation, and I think that we all learned so much from you. So thank you so much. It doesn't look like we have any questions yet, but if you all think of any questions, oh wait, we do have one. Let's see. What do you suggest when students have to do an activity? Do an activity that asks them to team up and they act like they don't like each other, especially with Yummy. So in some of the different curricula we use, the students have to pair up and work together. Have you had this experience, Deborah, where the students work together, but maybe they're not friends or they don't want to work together? And how have you overcome this?
Yes, I have had that experience, but with the high school students. So that's when the teacher has to become involved, and I assign them partners. I don't want them to choose their own, although that might be the easy way, but then they just chat. They don't do any work. They're just, having side conversations. And so I assign them their groups, and if they don't like it, and which oftentimes maybe they don't like that person. Maybe it's not that they don't like the people in their group, but they would rather be with someone else. That's when the teacher gets involved and says, okay, this is your group, and this is who you're going to work with. And then I'm out of that. That's the expectation, and that's what they do. So they may not work, it may not be the best experience for them, but that's because that's their choice. And you can't make someone, want to do anything. So I make the decision, and then the teacher backs me up, and then that's the way it is.
Thank you for sharing that, Deborah. I think that really emphasizes the importance of gaining support from the teacher and working together with the teacher, and also establishing ground rules from the beginning. So if you know that there is going to be a group activity in the lesson for that day, then maybe just telling the students before you start the activity, just so you know you will be working in groups, and yes, I will be pairing you up, and so you might not be with your best friend, but maybe if they know from the get-go, it won't be a surprise to them, and maybe that'll help them to be a little more accepting. But it sounds like your technique of, having the teacher back you up seems to be working out pretty well for you. And I think the fact that you don't let the students pair up themselves probably helps you have better control in the classroom, so that they're not having a lot of side conversations. So thank you for that question. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and present Sandy Crawford from Sarasota County's Best Practices. Sandy works with middle and high school students teaching YUM-E, the health and the science curriculums, Dig In with 6th graders, and Super Tracker. She said she's just starting. And Sandy said that she prefers the YUM-E science curriculum because she finds that this is the most hands-on and engaging, and I would agree with that. I love those lessons in that science curriculum. She found that it's worked really well with the classes that she teaches. And why does she like this curriculum? It's interactive, engaging, fun, and it fits with the curriculum standards for the grade levels. So YUM-E along with YUM, those are both matched with the Florida standards. So that might be a helpful way of getting you into the classroom and able to teach and take up the student learning time because it is matched with Florida standards. Sandy works predominantly with 7th graders, and she actually teaches in a life science class. And Sandy shared that some of the teachers actually rely on these YUM-E lessons for all of the nutrition that's taught during the school years. So she usually teaches 6 lessons, but occasionally teaches up to 8. And she was able to start teaching in these classes after they were approached by 7th grade teachers interested in a school garden and nutrition lessons. So I thought that was really interesting and wonderful that FNP is responsible for teaching nutrition for these teachers. A little sad that they're not getting anything else other than 6 lessons, but we teach where we can, so what a great opportunity. And here are some of her best practices. Sandy really emphasized the importance of building rapport with both the teachers and the students. She said that, the more that you gain the students' respect, the better attention, engagement, and attitude you get from the students. And she also shared that she has a really great relationship with the teachers, and with having the teacher support, she's able to have better coordination for overall programming and alignment with the core curriculum. She said that it's really important to have the teacher support because they can help with the students' attitudes and level of engagement. She has a good relationship with the teachers, and they really support what she's doing. She shared that sometimes the teachers will even add to the lesson by relating the lesson content back to what they're learning in class, which we don't really know what they're learning in class as well as the teacher does. So this helps to make the lessons more relevant for the students. And she said that the teachers also add in real life examples about the lesson material. So she said one teacher shared how his father, having diabetes and working the night shift, impacts his nutrition and his overall health. So really bringing in those real world examples help to make the lesson material more relevant for the students. Sandy also shared that she likes to make the lessons as engaging and as interactive as possible. So having the yummy science experiments with the help of the teacher can really help to keep the students' interest. She likes all of the different games and activities that are included in the curriculum. And she shared that sometimes even the worksheets that the students complete, the teachers will use as a lab grade or will count that as participation. So you can tell that she really has the support of the teachers, and they're really, intertwining Yummy with their everyday learning. But she emphasized that hands-on learning is key. Sandy shared that middle schoolers sometimes are more concerned with their looks and their body image, so she tries to relate the material to things that they care about. She talks about how healthy food can keep our skin and our hair healthy, and relating good nutrition to improved performance in sports, which is what some of our other speakers have shared as well. She said that it's important to keep the lessons interactive because those seem to work best. And one final thing that she shared is to know your content, because these higher level students can ask some tougher questions. But the more knowledgeable that you are, the more respect and trust you get from the students. She says that she's gotten questions on things like which kind of dairy food is best, question on milk alternatives, very detailed questions about the protein content of food, things like lactose-free foods, organic versus non-organic, and then a lot of science and disease-related questions. So she said that if the question is outside of her knowledge scope, she always refers back to the teacher, but just emphasized that the more knowledgeable she is, the more respect that she gets from the students. And a challenge that Sandy shared is that the teachers like her to teach class on Fridays. And this can be challenging because, as we all know, this is Friday morning for us here. It's hard for us to keep our eyes open and to keep focus during this 1 hour call, that the students have an even shorter attention span on Fridays. And she said that a teacher actually shared with her that if you don't get the students' attention in the first 3 minutes, you probably won't get it at all. So it's really important to capture their attention early on. And despite all of these challenges, Sandy still finds working with middle schoolers fun, and she really enjoys it. She said that it's great whenever she has the chance to build rapport with the students and they start looking forward to seeing her. And like Deborah, she said that it's very helpful to be non-judgmental, and she said that it's important not to be super serious. Obviously, you want to be professional and, have a professional learning environment, but you have to also, understand and meet the students where they are, and most importantly, to have fun with the students. So she said that she was intimidated at first, but now she really enjoys working with this age group. And she encourages other PAs to be involved in working with middle and high school students as well. So it looks like we might have one more question for Deborah. She says, Martin St. Lucie is asking, when we meet at the Ocoee High, you said that they were working on an updated version of Super Tracker. Do you know if they have published the new version? So Deborah, I'm going to unmute you, but I will also answer that question. I know that Super Tracker was doing a pilot program, but the one that's available on Canvas now, from my understanding, is an updated version. I believe that there are 6 lessons, whereas before there were only 4. So I apologize for not knowing this entirely because I was here before the pilot program started. But if anyone could verify, I think that the 6 lessons that are available on Canvas are the newer version. Deborah, do you have anything to add?
Yes, they are. That is the newer version on Canvas. They do. They have put a newer version in. It is not the exact same program that we piloted here with Ocoee at the Ocoee High School last year. We had 11 lessons. That curriculum had 11 lessons, and Super Tractor now only has 6. So there are some lessons that they did not include in that. But it is definitely an updated version, and it is more fun than the previous one.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that, Deborah. I really appreciate that. If anyone else has any questions for Deborah, for me, for anyone else, please feel free to ask them in the chat box now. And I also wanted to share that I have put out an announcement this week, but there are 8 new Yummy lessons available on Canvas. So maybe this PA call inspired you to start thinking about teaching more middle schoolers or high schoolers. So Yummy is developed by dietetic interns here at the University of Florida, and the last group of interns who developed Yummy lessons did some great health and science class lessons on a variety of topics. So I encourage you all to go on there and look through the lessons and maybe consider incorporating some of those lessons into your work. And you can use any of the new or the old lessons to create a series, so you can really personalize it to the needs of your group, which is great. To contact our speakers, I've included their email addresses here, so please feel free to reach out to any of our 3 speakers who presented today or for who I presented on their behalf. And coming up next, our next PA call is going to take place on Friday, March 2nd from 9 to 10 a.m. And we are going to have a new topic for PA calls. Katina Davis will be presenting on reporting. So any questions that you have about reporting, Katina will be able to answer at that time. She's gonna just share her screen and show some different things related to reporting, some best practices, and some easier ways of doing things. So if you have any questions about reporting, come prepared, and please participate in that PA call. So in December, we asked you to answer a PA call survey. We had, I think, close to 40 people respond to that, so thank you if you did respond. And we just wanted to share the results of this survey so that you could see how everyone's feeling about PA calls and if they find them useful and what topics they're interested in. So I loved these 2 statistics. 89% of participants find PA calls useful always or sometimes, so that's really encouraging to hear and something that we hope to continue on with this year. And again, 89% of participants have used information they've learned in PA calls in their work. So thank you to all of the speakers who presented on the PA calls over the past year or so, because you've clearly made an impact on the other PAs who have listened to these calls, so thank you. These were some of the topics of interest for PA calls for this year. So we've given this information to the state team, and they will be using your results to help think of new topics and new ideas for the PA calls that they'll be facilitating this year. So thank you. These were all really wonderful ideas, and they're really sparking interest for different topics for this year. So we also asked when you wanted PA calls to happen and how often. So half of the participants wanted PA calls to occur either every other month or quarterly, which would be every 3 months, and half of participants wanted PA calls monthly. So that was kind of split, and the best time for the PA call was actually the same time that they are now, so most people said that this time worked best for them. And the other times were Friday an hour later from 10 to 11, and the other time was Monday from 9 to 10 in the morning. 7 people responded that they are or they might be interested in presenting during a PA call. So not too many people said that they were interested in presenting, but hopefully you'll see that it's not too intimidating. And Deborah, was it very intimidating presenting? Not to put you on the spot, but I know you were a little nervous at first, but hopefully you found that this was a helpful experience.
Well, I did, because I'm able to talk about something that I really like. I really enjoy what I do. And yes, there are challenges, but in the end, it is so far more rewarding to do that. I mean, the rewards far outweigh the challenges. And so I don't mind sharing about something like that.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I just want to encourage anybody who's considering participating in a PA call to do it. If you are interested in presenting on a specific topic, here you can see our call schedule for this year. So we'll have topics on reporting, farm to school and community, evaluation, public health, and adult programming. So if you have interest in presenting on these topics, then please feel free to reach out to the state contact for any of these topics. And you'll see that the calls based off of the survey results will remain every other month, and they will take place on the first Friday of the month, except for this call, which was the second Friday because of the holidays, and they'll take place from 9 to 10 o'clock. So we liked the idea of doing them every month, but we understand that your main priority is to be doing programming, and we don't want to take away too much of your time from programming, because these calls, you do have to put a presentation together and practice and do practice runs and everything. So we felt that every other month would be good for this year. Okay, thank you all so much for participating. It doesn't look like we have any other questions, but if you do have any other questions for our speakers, feel free to email me or email them directly. And again, I thank Deborah and Donna and Sandy so much for their time and their participation in this call. Thank you all. We had a really good turnout today, so thank you all for listening in. It looks like we have 32 participants today, so that's wonderful. And I hope that you all have a great Friday and a great weekend. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.